Hello, this is Patrick Glasek from Car Games, and this is your How to Play video for Commissioned. Thank you for your interest in the game, and we hope you enjoy the video. So here's a look at what we have in the box from Commissioned. When you open everything up, we have elements of the trial deck cards over here. We have the faith deck for players right here. We've got the player board here in the middle. We've got rules, the instruction manual. We've got the theme appendix underneath it. Some stops. Over here we've got the church member cubes. We've got some missionary meeples. We've got the scenario cards that will describe how to set up each individual scenario. We've got some extinguished tokens, a converted city leader token, a Roman legion token, the elder staff, the message die, and then over here we have laid out the different player boards and the apostle pawns that are associated with those and the starting elements of the apostle decks. Now what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in and take a closer look at how you set up a 3-player game. Each game begins by selecting a scenario card from the options available. There are 5 scenarios in the game. We're going to set up today a 3-player version of the Acts of the Apostles. So this is the basic scenario of the game. Each scenario card has some setup notes that help you figure out where to put different pieces. It tells you if there are any special rules. In this case, all the rules will be the default rules of the game. Then we've got victory conditions. So to win this scenario, we have to get a church in every city, and we have to collect all 9 New Testament word cards. And then it's got a scenario summary of what it would mean historically if you failed as a team. Okay? And then on the back, we have just kind of a theme overview of what was happening at a time and the particular challenge that we were going to face. So we're going to select the Acts of the Apostles scenario, and then we're going to take the other 4 scenario cards and we're going to put those back in the box. Once we've got our scenario selected, the next thing we need to do is set up our trial deck. So over here there are 3 types of trial cards. There are trial cards that are only used in the martyr deck. They have the red flame symbol. There are trial cards that are used in both the disciple deck and the martyr deck. And then there are trial cards that are only used in the disciple deck. So the disciple deck is the easier, the martyr is the harder. To make the trial deck, what we're going to do is we're going to take the disciple deck, combine it with the combination cards. We'll shuffle that together. We'll put those back in the box. And then we're going to take this deck, and we're going to flip it over. We're going to put it into the trial space or the trial deck on the board. Now remember, when this deck runs out, the game is going to be over. So if players haven't achieved the win conditions by the end of the trial deck as we play, the game ends. Okay, some other things that we can do now. We're going to take the stops that are sitting over here. We've got growth and mission stops. The growth stops are the ones with the square, the church member X'd out. And the mission stops are the ones with the meeple shape X'd out. We're going to take those and we're going to put them up here on the board in the inkwell. That'll be available for play as we go. Okay, now we're going to take the church member cubes and we're going to do the same thing by putting those here on the bread. That's where it's the supply of church member cubes lives throughout the game. We'll get that all set up. Okay, and we're going to take missionaries. Missionaries, you only have a set number available based on the number of players that are playing. So in a 3-player game, you take 6 and you subtract the number of players playing, and that's how many missionaries you put on the board in accordance with the scenario card. So in this case, we'll take 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to put those here in Jerusalem according to what the scenario card says for placement. Place the apostles, missionaries, and 6 church members in Jerusalem. So we're going to grab 6 church members and we will put those in Jerusalem. Okay? Other things we have to do on the board here, we're going to take the extinguished tokens. These are the tokens that will snuff out a candle when you lose a church. Okay? So I'm going to stack them in order 1 through 5 according to the board side. So we're on board side A. So we're going to stack A1 through 5 up over here on the goblet so that they are ready for us to play. Then the last thing we need to do is around the board here, we need to take and sort out the faith deck by point value. So the deck has cards that are worth 1 point, 2, 3, and 4. So you'll take those, you'll shuffle them, and then you put them next to their appropriate icon face down next to the board. You've got that set up, ready to go. If you choose to play with the adversary variant, you would put this token near Rome or in Rome. But if you're not, then you take that away and you put it out in the box. We're not going to deal with that today. We're just going to play a basic game. The rules for that are inside the rule book. Now we're going to take a look at selecting. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention any missionaries that you don't use. Those need to be returned to the box. They will not be used during the rest of the gameplay. All right, now what I'm going to do is we're going to take a look at selecting apostles for the different players. For each apostle, you have an apostle board with a color indicator that matches you to your apostle pawn. You have your character name, a little information about what that character was historically. You have the order of play that we'll go through as we play. You have a prey box that will be used to play cards on your board. And then you have a graphical indication of that player's power. So in this case, Paul is good at removing the mission stops from the board. With that board comes 6 basic cards that are the fundamental part of that apostle's faith deck. So Paul has 6 cards. They're all the same, and they have his individual player on it. Okay. Barnabas has the same stuff. He removes the missions or the growth stops. Paul removes the mission stops. Barnabas removes the growth stops. James down here adds extra movement, so his cards have the arrow symbol. You have John, who is good at collecting the word cards. Right here, that's his symbol. And then also at streamlining decks, you have Andrew, who adds church member cubes. And then you have Peter, whose cards don't do anything to the board, but have twice the faith value. See, Paul's cards are worth 1 point here. Peter's are worth 2. So that's his player ability. So to start, each player is going to select one of the 6 apostles, take the apostle pawn and place them. In this case, it'll be in Jerusalem. We'll play with James, Barnabas, Paul. And they will take those and put them in Jerusalem in accordance with the scenario card. And then the other players or apostles that have not been selected will be returned to the box. Once you have your apostles selected and their pawns placed, we need to get the faith deck created. So you have your starting 6 apostle cards, and to that you're going to add 2 cards randomly drawn face down from the 2 faith pile. So we set the 2 faith pile up before. Now you're going to take 2 cards for each apostle. And you're going to add them to the faith deck. So we'll take 2 cards over here and we'll add those to Paul. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the 6 cards from Paul, shuffle those with the 2 faith word cards that he just got from the top of the board, and that will become his starting deck. We'll shuffle it up and we'll place those here in the draw pile. Once all players have that set, we'll go into the actual order of play, which is again described here on the apostle boards. The last thing we need to do is to select an elder. So you pick a player and they are going to get 2 things. They get the elder staff. We'll put this over here next to on Paul's player board. And then they are also going to get the message die. We put those 2 things over here together. So now what we have is we have Paul's draw pile. We have his player board indicating here that he is the elder. And then in his hand, we have a hand of 6 cards. So to start the game with 2 or 3 players, you draw 6 cards. That is the arm phase here on your player board. When you play with more players, you're going to have less cards in your starting hand potentially. Okay. The other thing you may have to do with more players is take some cards out of the trial deck, and that's described on the quick reference sheet on the back or on the setup page in the instruction manual. That's when you have more than 3 players playing. All right, so in this game we've got 3 players. We have everything now set up on the board, and we can go ahead and take a look at our first turn. So like it says here on the player board, the game is played in rounds and have 3 phases. Every phase we have the arm phase, which is the drawing of cards that we just did, the live phase that has 5 different actions in it, and we're going to go through the live phase a couple of times depending on the number of players. So with 2 or 3, we do it 2 times. With 4 or 5 players, we do it 3 times. With 6 players, you would go through the live phase 4 times. After you've done that cycle, in this case it'll be 2 times, then we do the mature phase at the end where we'll buy new cards into our faith deck. So we've already done arm, that's drawing cards. Now we're going to go into the live phase. So the first action is to trial. Paul is the elder, so he's going to do the trial by going over here to the trial deck and flipping that card over. So in this case, we have false teachers, and there's a historical citation that you can look up in the theme appendix about what was going on at the time. But what happens in the game is we need to apply this trial to the city where the elder is. So right now, Paul is the elder, so we look for the blue pawn. We're at the beginning of the game, so everybody is here in Jerusalem, but as you spread out later in the game, your trials will affect different parts of the board. So now what we have to do is apply the trial that we have, the false prophets here, to the city of Jerusalem. So all the symbols are described on the quick reference sheet on the back of the rule book, but this means that we have to take away a church member or a missionary meeple from the city. This means we have to add a mission stop, and this means we have to add a growth stop. So when you're doing this, if you can lose a church member, you would much rather lose a church member than a missionary meeple. So you take one of those church members, you put them back into the supply, get those put away. Then you're going to go back here and we're going to add a growth stop to Jerusalem. And then we're going to add a mission stop to Jerusalem. That is the trial action. So now we go back to the player or the order of play. The next thing is pray. So what all players are going to do now is they're going to take a look in their hand and they're going to see if they have, or they're going to pick 2 cards that apply and help the church to overcome the trial that we just dealt with on the board. Okay, so what we can do is Paul can pick any of the 2 cards out of his hand. We'll say he picks 2 of his cards, and you put them face down in the pray box. Grab some from Barnabas here, and we'll take some from James. All right, so now we have all players have prayed their 2 cards face down. If you are playing with a message die, which we do not recommend for beginning players in the first game, but later on when you're looking for some more challenge, now is when the elder will roll the message die. If you get a 4 or higher, you'll be allowed to talk for the remainder of the live phase. Okay, that's through the trial, pray, share, move, and grow actions. If you get less, you won't be able to talk, and there are some other bad things that happen as the numbers go. That is all described on the quick reference sheet on the back of the rule book. We're going to play without it for right now, just so we can continue showing how the game works. Okay? Once that is done, now all the players can flip their cards over. This is called the share action. So we did trial and pray, now we share. So we flip these over on each of the different apostle boards. Okay, so now the team has a total of 6 cards face up on the board, on the different player boards that the elder will be able to choose from. You can talk about it with the message die if you've rolled the number high enough. Otherwise you won't. The elder will have to make their choice on their own. Okay, so the different cards that we have available. We have Paul, which would remove a mission stop from somewhere in the region where the elder is. Okay, we have Barnabas cards. This is remove a growth stop from in the region. This is an example of a word card where we could either add a church member to any one church on the board, or we could take this card out of Barnabas's deck and collect it to the matching card or matching books of the New Testament down here on the bottom of the board. So the only time a card's going to come out of your deck is when you're collecting it here to the New Testament, or it's being cleaned out of the as a function of the card. Okay, back into the box, and that will be stated on the card that's being played. James' card, add extra movement. So we've got 6 cards, and the elder will pick 2. So in this case, we'll say Paul will pick his card to remove this mission stop from the city of Jerusalem. It would normally go back to the supply. I'll explain what that does in just a second. Okay, and then Barnabas is going to take his card, and he is going to add that into the New Testament. So, Paul, as the elder, is going to pick Barnabas' card and move that here. So now the rest of the cards, whether they were played or not, so for example, Paul used this card, but not this one, they are all going to go face up into the apostles' discard pile. So you're keeping your cards in your own pile. Got that all set up. And we have done the trial, pray, and share portions of the order of play. The next thing we're going to do in the live phase is move. So there are two types of moves that you can do, and the elder is allowed to do 2 moves during his turn. So the first type of move is called a mission move. That's where you're going to take some pieces from a city that has a church to an empty city. Okay, to do that, the city you're moving from has to have at least 4 pieces in it, and one of the pieces that moves has to be either an apostle pawn or a missionary meeple. You can take as many or as few people as you want on that journey. So we'll do that. That would be considered one mission move. Okay, another could go like that. That would be considered a second mission move. You can leave any number of pieces behind. You can actually move all the pieces out, but if the city becomes empty for any region, then we're going to have to extinguish one of those candles. So it's smart to leave at least 1 or 2 behind. Okay? So now what we've got is this is a growth stop here in Jerusalem. We've got the different cities. Those were 2 mission moves, and now the elder's move turn would be done. The other choice for movement is called a fellowship move. That's where you're moving in between established churches. And there are no restrictions for piece numbers or piece types. So you can just move church members in between established churches if you'd like to do a fellowship move. An important note here, we removed this mission stop from the city of Jerusalem before we started moving. When there is a mission stop on a church, that city cannot do a mission move. So if we had not been able to remove that from Jerusalem, we would have been stuck in the city when that happened. So that's why it was important to get rid of that mission stop. Okay, so we've done trial, pray, share, move. Now we do grow at the bottom. Any church that has 3 or more pieces in it gets an additional church member. Okay, so this has a total population of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that one will get one. This church has 1, 2, 3. So it will get one. This one has 1, 2, 3. It should get one, but it has a growth stop, which will block the growth action. So in this case, Jerusalem will not get a new church member. The last thing we do during the grow action is we take the elder staff and we pass that and the message die, if you're playing with it, along to the next player, and they are going to be the elder. Okay, so they would go through their trial. Barnabas flips over the trial. There's a hide from persecution, which says we can't move in the region where the elder is. Again, Barnabas is red. We're all in this green region. You can see the regions are denoted by the color boundaries on the board, or they also have different individual city shapes. So here in the green region we have stars. In the orange we have triangles. The yellows we have diamonds. So this is a trial that affects the region as a whole, not just the individual church. And that's based on where the elder is, which is now Barnabas. So you're going to go through the same actions. We're going to do pray. So we'll pick 2 cards from Barnabas. Pick 2 cards from Paul. And 2 cards from James. Okay, so in this case we get remove 2 mission stops from the region where Barnabas is. Remove 2 growth stops from the region where Barnabas is. Or add 2 extra movements. Well, we can't use the movements this turn because of the trial. We can use one of these to remove the growth stop out of Jerusalem. So we'll get rid of that. Okay, and there are no mission stops, so we're really only going to be able to use one of the 2 cards that have been played during this particular round. That's okay. So we come over here, we've done trial, pray, share. Now we would normally move, but we can't because of this particular trial. And now we grow. So we will grow here, here, and here. We were able to get rid of that growth stop, so now we can grow in Jerusalem. Okay, so that's the end of the second trip through the live phase. Okay, so we did arm where we drew cards. We went through the 5 actions twice for the live phase. Now we're going to get to mature where we buy new cards. One thing we need to do, or forgot to do here, is pass the elder token at the end of the growth action. So we pass that down to James. And so now we're going to start with James. These cards would have been discarded from the previous round. And James is going to be left with 2 cards. Actually, everybody has 2 cards left when you get to the mature phase. And what you're going to do is you're going to add up the point value of those 2 cards. So in this case, James has 4 points to spend. Barnabas has 3. And Paul has 3. Okay? So you get to spend that number of points to buy one or more cards from the different piles. So in the 1-level deck, you have different cards that have one effect on the board. We'll do things like add a church member or get one apostle out of jail. The 2-level cards are all of the different word cards that you need to fill in the New Testament. And they're worth 2 points. The 3-level cards have 2 effects on the board, so add 2 movement, or 2 church members, or remove 2 stops. And then the 4-level cards are major miracles from the book of Acts. So play extra cards, get a traveling teacher that gets a whole bunch of different church members in different cities, all kinds of stuff in that 4-level deck. So James has 4. He's going to choose to buy a 4-level card. If you buy one card, you take the top 2 cards off of the deck. You look at those, you get to pick one. So in this case, James is going to accept the crowd that accepts faith. And you're going to take the other card, and you're going to put that down at the bottom of the pile that it came from. Okay? And then you take the card that you bought and the cards that you used to buy it, and you're going to put all of those face up into your discard pile. Okay? Barnabas and Paul are going to do the same thing. And then you're going to go back to the beginning of the next round to arm your deck. So in this case, you need to be able to draw 6 cards. You draw from your draw pile. So James has got 2. So then what he's going to do is he's going to take this discard pile. He's going to shuffle it up. It's going to become the draw pile. And then he's going to draw the remaining cards he needs to have a hand of 6. In the future, if you have 6 cards here, then you leave your discard pile alone, and you'll shuffle it when you need to draw during the next turn. So that's a basic description of the order of play for Commissioned. The rulebook contains a description of special events, but we want to talk about a couple in this video. The first is traveling across water with boats. So if you're using a route as you go in between cities, and one of them has a boat, you have to move to that boat, and that requires, if the city on the far side is empty, it requires the mission move restriction. So in this case, you'd have to have at least 4 pieces here, and one of the ones moving has to be an apostle or missionary. They move 1 to the boat, and then they move 1 to the island. Okay, they don't have to be done in the same turn, so you can move to the boat and stay there. You'll still grow on that boat. While you're in the boat, you're considered to be in the blue water region. Okay, and then if you have any stops that are placed on this church while it's on the boat, those stops will move with the church to the destination city on the far side. Another thing we wanted to talk about is extinguishing. Okay, so if you draw a church with or a trial card with this symbol, it's going to look at the entire board and find the biggest church, which would in this case be this church here in Caesarea. Okay, so you follow the board, follow the rule book. It's extinguished. All of these pieces are lost to the supply. Okay, and the apostle pawn has to move to the closest surviving church. So we'll shift him over. Okay, now that means this has been emptied. So we take the extinguished token from the top of the pile here, and we move that over and snuff the first candle out. If all 5 candles are snuffed, we lose the game. Okay, but it's important to realize that apostles' pawns are never removed from the board. They will just shift to the nearest surviving church. Several other special circumstances like this are described in the rulebook, as well as a full example of the gameplay. We thank you for watching this video and hope that you really enjoy Commissioned.